All right, ready to dive deep into the world of Pachycephalosaurs.
You know those dinosaurs? The ones with the dome-shaped heads.
Yeah, exactly. Those are those. Always a fan favorite. But I hear there's more to them than just the headgear.
Oh, way more.
Oh, really?
Yeah, recent research is actually kind of changing how we think about their whole family history.
So we're not just talking about those late Cretaceous boneheads anymore.
Nope, we're going way back, tracing that lineage, and finding some pretty unexpected ancestors. It's like a puzzle.
A puzzle.
Yeah, a prehistoric puzzle. We're trying to figure out how they got those domes, by looking at who they came from.
Okay, so where do we start with this puzzle? Who were the ancestors?
Well, we got to go way back to the Triassic period.
All right.
Think like the very first dinosaurs. We're talking Silosauridae family.
Silosauridae.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a new one. Why are they important?
Well, they were a pretty interesting bunch. They actually started as meat eaters, but then over time they transitioned to plants.
Wait, hold on. So the ancestors of these, like, hard-headed dinos were meat eaters.
It seems that way. Some even started walking on two legs.
Wow, that's a serious change.
Yeah, and scientists think that those changes, that shift to plants and walking upright, could have been a big step towards, Pachycephalosaurs and even all those ornithischian dinosaurs.
The bird-hipped dinos.
Exactly. If you're interested in, digging deeper into that whole ornithischian ancestor thing, there's a cool video by YouTuber Arena called, Looking for the Ancestors of Ornithischian Dinosaurs.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check that out. So meat eaters to plant eaters. What else? Are there other ancestors we should know about?
There's another group called the Heterodontosauridae.
Okay, I'm going to need you to say that one again.
Heterodontosauridae.
Heterodontosauridae. Got it. But why are they so important?
Well, their name actually means different-toothed lizard. And it fits. They had these winged teeth, basically teeth with, three different sections, like a Swiss Army knife. They had sharp edges for slicing, points for piercing, then these broad surfaces for grinding.
Wow, so they had like a whole toolkit in their mouth.
Yeah, exactly. So we know they weren't just eating leaves. Their diet had to be way more complex than we originally thought.
Makes sense with all those teeth.
Yeah. And here's the kicker. Recent research suggests that heterodontosaurids might be close relatives of, you guessed it, Pachycephalosaurs.
Whoa, wait a minute. So we went from dome heads to these multi-tooled herbivores. Is that connection even, accurate? They seem so different.
Yeah, that's the debate right now. But the more we learn about these ancient lineages, the more we find these surprising connections.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So what else is new about these Pachycephalosaur ancestors? Any other big surprises?
Well, this one's kind of wild. Some of them, we think, might have had feathers.
Feathered Pachycephalosaurs? You're kidding. Nope. This comes from a unique dinosaur found in China, Tianulong confuciusi, a late Jurassic heterodontosaurid. And guess what? Its fossil had feather impressions. Not like the feathers we see on birds today, more like unbranched tubes, like filaments.
Kind of like those tubular feathers I've heard about before.
Yeah. And this suggests that maybe, just maybe, those tubular feathers were a characteristic of the whole ornithischian line.
So Pachycephalosaurs with feathers. Who knew? Okay, this family tree is officially more complicated than I thought.
And way more interesting. But I think now it's time we talk about those iconic dome-shaped heads.
Finally. So we're talking headbutting now, right? Like those classic Pachycephalosaur battles.
Well, not so fast. There's actually a lot more to those domes than you might think. You see, one of the challenges we have is that most of the Pachycephalosaur fossils we find are just skulls. Like ceratopsians, those horned dinosaurs, we don't have many complete skeletons.
So it's like trying to understand an entire animal based on just its head. Yeah. It makes figuring out their evolutionary history a real challenge. The oldest Pachycephalosaur we've got, Amcacephalgabiensis. It's from the late Cretaceous of Mongolia, and it already had a nearly complete dome. But without earlier fossils, it's hard to say how that dome evolved.
So we're missing those key pieces of the puzzle.
Pretty much. But we do have some theories. One idea is that, kind of like ceratopsians, Pachycephalosaurs might have come from small bipedal ancestors who already had some kind of specialized skull feature.
Oh, so those domes weren't always for headbutting. What else could they have been used for?
That's a question that has sparked a lot of debate. You know those images of Pachycephalosaurs, smashing heads? Well, recent research, looking at skull slices, suggests adult Pachycephalosaurs might not have been built for that kind of impact.
Wait, are you saying those epic headbutting battles in movies might be wrong? But if not head-to-head, then what? How else could they use those domes?
Well, there are other theories. Some scientists think maybe they did something called flank butting, using their heads to hit the sides of their rivals. Others think those domes were mainly for show, to attract mates or scare off competition.
Like a peacock's tail.
Exactly. So, what do you think those domes were for? It's a mystery we're still trying to solve. But hey, maybe we should talk about some other features that make Pachycephalosaurs unique. Like, did you know there's a ton of diversity within the Pachycephalosaur family?
Oh, really? I thought they were all basically the same, just with slightly different domes.
Nope, not at all. We've got prenocephalprenes from Asia, Pachycephalosaurus wyomingensis from North America.
Hold on. Pachycephalosaurus wyomingensis. Isn't that the one that caused a bunch of controversy a while back? Something about different species being the same.
You got it. There's a big debate going on about whether three seemingly different species, Dracorex hogwartsia, Stygomoloch spinifer, and Pachycephalosaurus wyomingensis, are actually just different growth stages of the same species.
So, like, those spiky heads in smaller domes might just be a teenage phase before they get the full Pachycephalosaurus dome.
Yeah, something like that.
Wow, it's like every time we think we figured out dinosaurs, they throw us a curveball.
It's one of the things that makes studying them so exciting.
That's for sure. So, different growth stages, diverse species. What else makes these Pachycephalosaurs stand out?
Well, we could talk about some of their lesser-known relatives, the ones who might not be as famous but still have some pretty cool stories.
Yeah.
You interested? You bet. I mean, we've talked a lot about those direct ancestors, right? But there's a whole bunch of other Pachycephalosaur relatives that, well, they deserve some attention too.
Yeah, for sure. Who are some of those lesser-known family members? What makes them so cool?
Okay, so there's Thesaurus, a bipedal herbivore. Think like super speedy, agile, probably use that speed to outrun predators.
Oh, so like a little road runner?
Pretty much. Then there's Orodromius, also a fast runner, but this one might have lived in burrows.
Interesting. So different survival strategies, even within the same family.
Right. And then there's Stegosaurus. It didn't have a super prominent dome, but its skull roof was still thick.
So maybe still some headbutting or shoving going on.
Yeah, could be. So you see, even without those big, obvious domes, these dinosaurs found ways to thrive. It's like every species had its own unique toolkit for survival.
Absolutely. That diversity is what makes the dinosaur world so fascinating. But, I keep thinking about those domes. We've talked about a few theories, but I'm still kind of hung up on the headbutting idea. Is there any new evidence to support that?
Well, it's definitely still a big debate. The classic view, the one we all know, is that, yeah, Pachycephalosaurs used those domes for head-to-head combat.
Right, like battering rams.
Huh.
But you were saying earlier that recent research might be challenging that idea.
Yeah, scientists have been taking a much closer look at the skulls, like the bone density, how the head connects to the neck, all that. And what they're finding is that, honestly, those direct impacts, they would have been incredibly risky.
So maybe those domes weren't as strong as we thought. But then what's with that thickness, that rounded shape? It seems like they were built for impact.
It's a real head-scratcher, right? That's why there's so much debate. One alternative theory is that maybe they did what's called flank butting. Instead of head-to-head, picture them side by side. They could slam into each other's flanks using those domes, without actually hitting heads.
Okay, that actually makes a lot more sense. Less risk of a concussion, right?
Exactly. But then there's still that whole display idea. We can't forget about sexual selection. Maybe those domes were more about showing off to attract mates or to intimidate rivals.
So like a prehistoric fashion statement. Check out my dome.
It's possible. I mean,
Oh,
we
yeah.
see that kind of thing all the time in nature. Peacocks with their huge feathers, deer with their antlers. It's all about showing off your best assets.
It's incredible to think that those domes could have served so many different purposes. Defense, display, maybe even species recognition.
For sure. It just goes to show how complex these animals were and how much we still have to learn.
Speaking of learning, what about those different species, or growth stages, rather? You mentioned that some of those seemingly separate Pachycephalosaurs might actually be the same dinosaur, just at different ages.
Oh, yeah, that's a really interesting one. It's all about Pachycephalosaurus wyomingensis. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, vaguely. Remind me.
Okay, so some scientists think that Dracorex hogwartsia and Stygomoloch spinifer, those ones with the really distinct skull features, might just be juvenile forms of Pachycephalosaurus wyomingensis.
So those crazy spikes and smaller domes, it's like their awkward teenage phase
Yeah.
before they grow into that full Pachycephalosaurus look.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
crazy how much our understanding of dinosaurs is changing.
And that's what makes it so cool. It's a field that's always evolving. There are always new discoveries, new ways of looking at things.
I totally agree. So we've talked about ancestry, diversity within the Pachycephalosaurs, the whole dome debate. What else is there? What other aspects of these dinosaurs should we be thinking about?
One thing that always fascinates me is how, even within closely related species, you can see these incredible differences in how they evolved. It's like, even though they're family, they all took their own unique paths.
Yeah, and we see that in those domes too, right? Like some are flatter, some are huge, some are covered in bumps.
Exactly. And it all comes down to environment and lifestyle. Different pachycephalosaurs face different challenges, maybe different predators, different food sources, different competition for mates. All of that shapes how they evolve.
It's amazing to think that something as simple as a change in environment can lead to such dramatic differences in physical appearance.
That's evolution for you. It's all about adaptation, and it shows that even a group as specialized as Pachycephalosaurs, they had this remarkable capacity for change and diversity.
So we've really gone deep on Pachycephalosaurs today, from their family tree to those mysterious domes. But before we wrap up, what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to remember about these incredible creatures?
I think the biggest takeaway is that evolution, it's not like a straight line.
Why?
It's more like a journey. And Pachycephalosaurs, they weren't just stuck in one way of life just because they had those domes. Their ancestors, they were doing all sorts of things, different diets, maybe even feathers. That journey, all those changes over millions of years, that's the really cool part.
Yeah, it really puts things in perspective. They weren't just those headbutting dinosaurs. They were a whole group of animals figuring out how to survive. And yeah, we almost forgot about those crazy teeth and the possibility of feathers.
Exactly. It's so easy to just focus on the most obvious features, but the real story is usually hidden in those details, those unexpected connections.
And sometimes even the obvious features are more complicated than we think, like those domes. We still don't know for sure what they were for.
And that's part of what makes paleontology so exciting, right? There's always something new to discover, always another mystery to solve.
Absolutely. So what's next for Pachycephalosaur research? What are some of the big questions that are still out there?
Well, we still don't know a lot about their behavior, how they interacted with each other, how they raised their young. And we're finding more and more evidence that there are actually a lot of different kinds of Pachycephalosaurs, but we're still trying to figure out how they were all related and how all those unique features evolved.
Sounds like there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to study these dinosaurs?
I'd say stay curious. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to challenge what we think we know. Paleontology is always changing, so there's always something new to learn.
And never underestimate the power of a good fossil.
Exactly. Every fossil has a story to tell, and it's our job to figure out what that story is.
Well said. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of Pachycephalosaurs. We've learned about their ancestors, their domes, their diversity, and all the mysteries that still surround them.
I hope this has inspired everyone to learn more about these fascinating creatures and the prehistoric world.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep those imaginations going. Until next time, happy fossil hunting, everyone!